Good morning. It is great to be here with you today. As a dad, there are times when I really enjoy being a dad, and times when I'm amazed my parents didn't kill me, and I'm wondering if I will succeed in the same. If you have any kids, perhaps you know what those times are like. This week, I got to enjoy both of those extremes, the times where I was like, why did I have kids? And the times I'm like, this is what it's all about. And one of the things that was really fun I got to do this week, earlier this year, about midway through the basketball season, we found that UT has a basketball camp every year. And it was way more than we wanted to spend or had in our budget to spend. So we told our 10-year-old Elijah, if you work hard and earn the money to pay for half, we'll pay for the other half. So he began to mow neighbors' yards and do extra chores at my parents' farm, and he earned the money to pay for half of this basketball camp, so we signed him up. And for 4 days this last week, I got to drive extra early in the morning, which I love early mornings. And I got to go to Thompson Bowling Arena, and I got to drop him off that he could, with the UT basketball team, practice basketball for the whole day. And it wasn't just Elijah, it was him with about 300 other kids. And the thing that I really enjoyed watching these kids morning by morning there on the court, looking at all the chairs and all the space that one day would be filled with people. The thing that I really enjoyed is as I looked around the court and I watched these kids, child after child and child, you could tell, believed one day they would be on that court again. But those stands wouldn't be empty. They'd be filled with a whole arena full of people cheering them on and celebrating. And as I watched Elijah play, I discovered two things to be equally true. He was not the worst kid out there, and he was also not the best kid out there. And as I watched the kids play for a little bit before I had to go on with actually doing my job and going to work, I saw something that was spectacular. None of those kids seemed to know how to do math because only 15 people can be on the team at a time, and they all believed they would be among the 15. They all seemed to play and to practice as if this was the first day of the rest of their life, and it was so fun to watch as player after player who were actually on the team interacted with these kids. And I didn't hear or see any of them say, you'll never make it, you can't do it. Instead, hey, keep practicing, go harder, you can do this. The encouragement from college students to third graders and fifth graders and seventh graders saying, keep going, you can do it. Now that's one kind of witness that we may have, a witness in an arena who's watching a crowd of people do something exciting. But my 10-year-old is a child of many curiosities. In far too many ways that I care to admit, he is my child, for good and for bad. And as a result, he's constantly asking me all kinds of questions I don't have many answers for. Like, for example, on the drive last week to go hang out with a friend, he asked me all about World War II. And I thought he's 25 years too young to be into World War II history, but he wanted to know. And it wasn't just World War II. He went on to ask me about things present day, like, have you ever been on a jury, Dad? Nope, I've never been summoned to jury duty. And he's like, well, what's it like to be on a jury? I just want to see what a trial's like. Someday I hope to be on a jury. And he spoke it into existence, because this week I got summoned for jury duty in October. So I will be able to tell him what that experience is like later, unfortunately. We'll see how it goes. You can have a crowd of witnesses that are watching to cheer you on and celebrate. And you can have a crowd of witnesses that are there to tell you what is or is not true, what did or did not happen, who's guilty or who's innocent. Today, as we pick up with Hebrews, we see this language used of a cloud of witnesses surrounding us. And this is meant to both encourage and challenge you and me. If you'd like to follow along, we are in the blue Bibles in Hebrews chapter 12 on page 1253. Feel free to use your own Bibles or to use your phones. Hebrews chapter 12. For the last several weeks, we have been discovering Jesus through Hebrews, a letter that was written to Jewish people experiencing persecution, specifically Jewish Christians who followed after Jesus, and as a result were suffering from the hands of the Jewish believers or Jewish people who were not Christians, and also from the pagans who were not Christians, and they were getting it from both sides, and they were struggling. And the author of Hebrews paints this picture of Jesus as being the fulfillment of all of the Old Testament. And he describes in so many ways, often tedious and cumbersome for those of us who are not accustomed to Jewish tradition. He describes how Jesus is greater than the priests and a better sacrifice and a better tent and all these things. And last week, while I was gone doing a wedding, Vicar Larry filled in, and he shared with us from Hebrews 11 that faith is the assurance of things not seen. And he described his own struggle with vision impairment and glasses that help him to see through a new lens and bring everything into alignment. And he described for us that Jesus and faith in Jesus is like that vision, that we can see things correctly when we see them through who he is. And we can believe in things that have not yet come to pass, promises that are not yet realized, truths that we don't yet know. We can believe anyway. Like the room full of kids believing one day they will play on that court. Many of them will not. But we can believe knowing that what we believe in, what we hold faith in, what we place the object of our affection in is true and will come to pass. Hebrews chapter 12. At the end of 11, after all of that, he describes person after person after person who believed in God even though the promise never came to be. They never saw what God said he would do, but they continued to trust anyway. And we get to chapter 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Earlier this summer, my wife and I had the opportunity to go to Italy, a place neither of us had ever been, and we got to see church history and things that have happened since long before you were ever a figment in your parents' imagination. We got to see things that were 2,000 years old, and it was really remarkable to think about. All of the people that walked those roads, that built those cathedrals, that prayed before those altars. And it's really interesting to think about all the people who walked away, who saw it take place and said, I don't really want anything to do with that. And one of the things that was so interesting to us was the perspective of time that most of us don't have. See, almost all of the buildings and the cathedrals and the things we got to see were so old they were built before we had much of the technology we have today to speed things up. And many of the buildings were built in such a way that one generation would lay the foundation, and the next generation would come along and build the walls, and the next generation might put a roof on the building. The generation after that began to decorate and make these cathedrals filled with all kinds of art and awe and wonder. And as I was seeing these things, I thought to myself, how many people in our congregation would be content if we as a church spent the rest of your lives physically building the foundation of a building we would never be in to celebrate Jesus? See, there was this perspective that was built in to their limitations. A perspective that said we have to look beyond ourselves because we can't do it by ourselves. So we will prepare for somebody else to experience a blessing that we don't get to enjoy. Since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, where I want us to start today as we look at how Jesus is greater, is that you are not alone. In our American culture, where we place the instant gratification and the immediacy of the moment ahead of everything else, we can forget that there have been people who've walked in your shoes or shoes very similar for hundreds or thousands of years. As a dad who sometimes struggles with trying really hard to not lose my cool when my kids are being kids and don't understand how the world looks, it can be difficult to forget, or difficult to remember, easy to forget, that there have been generations of parents with children a lot like mine, mostly pretty good and still filled with sin, and still learning how to live in this broken world and how to follow after Jesus. And sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't, and sometimes it feels like it's all my fault, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what happened here. This surely isn't me. They must be adopted. It's easy as a parent to forget that I'm not alone. Maybe you felt that way in your struggles in faith. Your sickness, your hardship. You keep coming back to God. God, I've got all these questions and they don't seem to be answered. I talk to all my friends and everything's going well for them, but not for me. Nobody's here and I'm all alone. The author of Hebrews says, we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Our faith is personal, but it is not individual. It's incredibly personal to you, but you are not alone in your faith. There are generations of people, thousands, millions who've come before us, who fought the good fight and finished the race, who have struggled day in and day out with all kinds of hardships and pain and experienced all kinds of joy and freedom. Have questioned, God, where are you in the midst of this? And have still managed to hold on to faith. This cloud of witnesses is like an arena cheering on a basketball team. They're there for one reason alone, because they want to celebrate you. They want to cheer you on and say, keep going. Don't give up. And this cloud of witnesses is there like all the witnesses in a jury. All the ones who are presented to the jury to say, I saw what happened. They're there to tell you and to tell me this Jesus that we hear about in Scripture, he is real. And what he did is real. And what he's doing is real. And you can have full confidence that all the things he said he will do that seem to not yet have come to pass, he will do them. They're there to bear witness to the truth. This cloud of witnesses invites us then to lay aside every weight. Part of this basketball camp, we got to go extra early, even earlier than normal, so that Elijah could sit and watch UT's men's basketball practice. I'd never seen a college basketball practice before. If you've never seen it, it's a whole different thing. There's like 27 coaches and 2 or 3 each watching one player and each one telling the player how much they're doing wrong. And when the player's not doing it right well enough, the coach eventually is like, run the stairs. And they got to run the whole stairs at Thompson Bowling Arena and then back down to get right back at it. And they're doing it over and over and over again. And I was like, these guys seem mean. I don't want to play college basketball. And what I realized when I watched was their motivation was, we want what's best for you. And wanting what's best for you, we have to push you beyond your own perceived limits. And it seemed to me as I watched that even when the players were mad they had to run the stairs, that they got it. That this was for their good, even though it hurt, and they were huffing, and they were puffing, and they were struggling. Let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. In this journey with Jesus, we are all weighed down with sin. In this place, we don't think that you are sinners. No, we think that we are sinners. We don't think it's everybody else out there. It's all of us in here. We're only in this place not because we're perfect and we have life figured out. We're in this place gathered together because you and I, as Martin Luther once said, are beggars telling another beggar where to find bread. I am a mess, but I know a God who heals. Come and join me and receive. And there's a temptation in this life to dismiss our sin as not that significant. But the author of Hebrews says, let us look to this cloud of witnesses and therefore lay aside all of the sin that hinders us. All of the things we've been holding dearly, all of the things we think really matter, all the stuff we've built up that is meaningless and insignificant, that leaves us hurt and broken, says, let's leave that all behind so that we can run. So that we can run with endurance the race set before us. Because in this life we will have trouble, but Jesus has promised to overcome the world. In this world, we will need endurance because this is not a sprint to the finish line. It's a marathon, a long journey to come. While we were on vacation, I was with my brother-in-law who runs ultra marathons, which I cannot relate to at all. Like, not even in the slightest, because a 3K to me sounds just like, why run that much? I don't get it. Unless I'm being chased, I don't want to run. And he runs ultra marathons, so 100K at a time or more, and usually through the woods and over the mountains and through the rivers and not to grandma's house, I don't know, but he runs everywhere he goes. Even while we were on vacation in Italy, he's waking up at like 5 a.m. to go running in 95-degree heat and explore the city on just a light, casual 20-mile run, morning after morning after morning. So I was talking with him about his experience as a runner in these ultra marathons. He said, you know, when you run ultra marathons, there's a point where it gets really tough. You get to like 60 or 70 kilometers, and I don't know if I can finish this. And you come across a cheering squad, and they're cheering you on. They're like, you're almost there. You can do this. But you know in your head, you got another 20 or 30 kilometers to go. You're not actually almost there. And you just have to decide, am I going to finish this thing or am I going to tap out? And as he spoke that to me, he's like, I don't understand anything you're saying because I wouldn't have even gotten close to that place. But he said, sometimes that crowd around us actually makes it harder because you see them and you want to just join them. You want to give up and be with them, but you know you got to keep going. Let us see this cloud of witnesses and not give up to join them, not acquiesce and say, well, this life is temporary, it'll all go away. Let us be spurred on to run with endurance. Whatever hard and challenging and ugly may come, keep going. Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. The author of Hebrews, seeking to encourage the church going through hard times, says, you have not yet shed your own blood during this trial. Keep going. Because the founder of our faith, the whole reason we can hope, is we have a God who endured from sinners all kinds of hostility. All the hate and all the shame and all the condemnation, he took it for us. And he shed his blood freely that you and I may have a new life. And the author of Hebrews continues and he describes for a little while the reality of discipline, how sometimes the hard things we go through are because we're being disciplined, like a father who disciplines his son in the hopes that his son would grow. And then we get to verse 12. And in verse 12, he says this, therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees. If you're running this race with endurance and you're tired and you're weary, if the weight of this world seems too much, if you're struggling because all the people who should love Jesus look nothing like Jesus, and all the people who say they love Jesus are really quick to say they don't love you, if you are walking through a season where you just want to quit, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees. For the founder of our faith has finished it for you. And he will always be faithful to do what he said he will do, to bear you through to the end, to carry you across that finish line. So lift those drooping hands and come before him. He will always be enough. And make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. Strive for peace with everyone, and for the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. It says, keep going in this journey. The reward to come is greater. Jesus himself is greater. Keep going. Strive for peace with everyone. Those few words are so hard for me. See, it's really easy for me to be peaceful to other people, especially strangers. To be kind and gentle and loving, that's fine. And sometimes I manage to be peaceful with my children. Sometimes. But for me, the hardest part to strive for peace with everyone is even peace with myself. See, my struggle at times, in fact, most of the time, is I can be my own biggest critic. I know my weaknesses and my failures and my struggles more than anybody else in the room. And it's really easy to extend grace and really hard to receive it. And a counselor about a year ago I heard say to me, and I thought this was really tough. She said, would you speak to your congregation the way you speak to yourself? And the honest answer is most of the time, hopefully, I would never speak that way to anyone. Strive for peace with everyone. This morning, as you run this race with Jesus and as you struggle in faith, is there someone you need to make peace with? Someone you need to speak words of grace to forgive and restore, to offer healing where they're hurting? Is that someone you? Strive for peace with everyone, that no root of bitterness may grow up. The reality is when we don't strive for peace, when we dismiss things under the rug or we continue to excuse and say that's just a me problem, not an us problem, when we act like everything's okay when it's not, what grows in our heart is not the love of Jesus, not the kindness and the goodness and the grace of Jesus. What grows in our heart is bitterness. Bitterness for others who aren't treating you the way you want to be treated, or who are better than you when you've worked really hard to be where you are, or bitterness for those who seem to have everything come easy to them. So why doesn't anything come easy for me? And bitterness will always destroy love. So strive for peace with everyone, that there may be no bitterness. And then he comes to this next bit in chapter 12, and this is where we're going to end. For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. He's referencing the Old Testament where the people of God were delivered from slavery and were brought into the wilderness to a mountain where they were all supposed to go up and encounter the Lord and be in his presence and experience the fullness of him. But they saw the mountain shaking and they heard the voice from the cloud and they were terrified because they thought, surely we cannot be in the presence of this God. And they dismissed themselves from God's presence and they sent one on their behalf. Moses, you go up and you meet with God and you come back and tell us how it was. You come back and tell us what it was like. You come back and we'll live vicariously through you because I can't do it myself. The author of Hebrews is speaking to these Jewish people and he says, look, for you, the reason why you can live this life and hold this faith and run this race is because you have not come to a kingdom that can be shaken. You've not come to a mountain where you're terrified and say, I can't go. Somebody must go for me. He continues, "For they could not endure the order that was given, if even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, 'I tremble with fear.' But you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gatherings, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel." You and I haven't come to a place where God is distant and scary, and we need somebody else to go before him for us. We have been brought into the city of the living God, the place where he dwells, invited to be with him now and tomorrow and forevermore. We've been invited before the judge not for fear that witnesses against us will declare he is guilty, but that all the cloud of witnesses around us will declare he is worthy. He has made a better way. He, that is Jesus, has prepared for you and me to be in that place forevermore. And we have come to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, a new promise, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. If you don't know the story, Abel was the son of Adam and Eve along with Cain. And Abel and Cain offered sacrifices to God. And within Cain's heart was bitterness and anger. And it says sin was creeping at the door. And when Cain was overtaken by that bitterness and that anger, he killed his brother Abel. And when God confronted him, God said, "The blood of your brother Abel is crying out from the ground against you." That is to say, you are guilty, and the ground itself declares this. Look at the pool of blood and the stain where you murdered your brother. The author of Hebrews says that this new covenant that Jesus brings to us, this blood that sprinkles us clean, is better than that blood that declared him guilty. Because the blood that sprinkles us clean speaks a better word that says to you and to me, you are forgiven. Press on. Run the race with endurance, not to prove anything, not because you need to earn anything. Run because you have been empowered to run by a God who's running after you. The blood that speaks a better word that says you are forgiven and new and loved. And when there's peace for everyone else, a blood that speaks for you, peace for you as well. Your sins are forgiven. Here in a moment, we get to receive communion together. And as we receive this meal, we get to celebrate that this race we run with endurance, this faith we seek after, this promise of a life that is truly life, comes to us not with arbitrary promises that can be broken, but by the very blood of our Lord Jesus. God himself sent his Son that you and I may have peace with everyone, and faith to believe that whatever today may hold, he is with us and he is for us, and nothing will separate us. Will you pray with me? God, your blood speaks a better word. We ask this morning you would remind us of the cloud of witnesses, those who have struggled in faith and held firm, those who've walked through the hardships of life and trusted in you, those who declare that what you did and what you said are true, yesterday, today, and forever. May we run with endurance, trusting each day that you will be enough in all of our troubles. May we strive for peace with everyone. May we receive peace from you. God, as we prepare to eat and to drink, to receive your body and your blood, may your blood speak a better word, a word of forgiveness and grace and healing and hope for life everlasting. Amen.